Hey everybody, James A. Janice here, and I'm happy to welcome you to the first episode of a brand new Dead Meat series, The Cut Comparison. In this series, I'll be comparing different versions of movies I've already covered on the Kill Count, because sometimes those differences can make for an entirely new viewing experience. Take, for example, the subject of today's episode, Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers. Cursed is the sixth film of the Halloween series, and its production was a goddamn mess. It had been 6 years since the previous Halloween came out, and if you'll remember, that one introduced a bunch of weird shit, but with no explanation for any of it. The filmmakers literally made that stuff up and left it to whoever wrote the next one to explain everything. Like why Michael had a wrist tattoo of a paper boat all of a sudden, or who that mysterious man in black was, who went around kicking dogs and jailbreaking Michael like he was the latest iPhone. Making things even more difficult was the fact that during the interim, the Halloween series had been sold to Dimension Films, the production company owned by the Weinstein brothers. The Weinsteins were much more involved in the movie's production than previous studios, and they put a lot of pressure on fresh-faced director Joe Chappelle to make the movie the way they wanted it, which was basically more gore and less Loomis. After a test screening of the original cut performed poorly with the mostly teenage audience, the Weinsteins got their way, and the film underwent a series of reshoots that resulted in the theatrical cut released to the public. That's the version I covered on the Kill Count, and you should watch that video before continuing with this one by clicking right up there. Now, a lot of people involved in Curse's production had very different ideas from the Weinsteins. They included producer Paul Freeman, who had also produced Part 4, Mustafa Akkad, the grandfather of the series, and the only person to have been involved with every single film of the franchise up to that point, and writer Dan Ferens, who was a true blue Halloween fan and whose original script was apparently way better than either cut of Curse. Movies, man, they're messy to make. And even all of those guys, as united as they were against the Weinsteins, couldn't agree on exactly what they wanted for this movie. So in short, Curse of Michael Myers had a ton of people trying to dictate the tone and content of the film, and that's why it wound up being such garbage. The producer's cut of the film is the original cut, and the one favored by Akkad and Freeman. It's much more like the first Halloween film than what we saw in the theatrical cut. And by that I mean there's much less gore to the kills and way more use of Carpenter's Halloween theme. It's everywhere in this cut.
Tonight's gonna be killer.
Kara, I swear, one of these days you're gonna get lost in that thing.
I can't find my term paper.
In the theatrical cut, a lot of that music was replaced by generic grungy rock.
Tonight's gonna be killer.
Kara, I swear, one of these days you're gonna get lost in that thing.
I can't find my term paper.
Also, if you watch them back to back, you may notice that the color grading is different between the cuts. The theatrical version is warmer and has more contrast, while the producer's cut almost looks unfinished, with a much cooler tint to it. In case you didn't know, color correction makes a huge difference in the look of a film, or even a YouTube video. In fact, this is what the kill count footage looks like when it's raw and untouched before I color it, and of course this is what it looks like after. Hell of a difference, right? One more minor change that makes a huge difference is the transitions between scenes. While the producer's cut doesn't have anything special going on, the much faster paced theatrical cut has this shit.
Blood, coming.
And it has them all over the place, even in scenes that don't call for something crazy like that.
All it takes is a mother's touch.
To me, it's an annoying attempt to make the film flashier, and it doesn't work at all. By far the biggest difference between the cuts, though, is the ending. After Kara gets abducted by the Cult of the Thorn, the cuts diverge, never to reunite again. The only things they have in common are any shots with Dr. Loomis, since sadly, Donald Pleasence passed away before they did the reshoots for the theatrical cut. That's why sometimes in that version, it feels like Loomis and Dr. Wynn aren't really talking to each other, because they weren't. But besides that, the entire final 15 minutes of the film was completely changed, with the theatrical cut adding way more bloodshed and getting rid of most of the cult stuff. But enough of this lengthy overview. What I want to do with this series is actually go through the alternate cut bit by bit and point out all the differences I can, small and big. I may miss a few here and there, but I'll do my best, and afterward I'll give a roundup comparison and tell you which version of the movie I prefer. Sound good? All right, let's get to the differences. Let's get to the differences. Right off the bat, we get a different title card in the producer's cut, with this one featuring the number 6 as well as that stupid thorn symbol, reflecting its greater significance and prominence in this version of the movie. An additional title plants the movie in a specific year for any time-traveling viewers, and the opening credits use a different font. Oh, also, gone is the Steven from Paul Rudd's name. Maybe you should have compromised and gone as Paul S. Rudd, dude. Middle initials are dope. The scene with Jamie giving birth to her little bastard baby is mostly the same, except in the producer's cut, we've got a few extra shots of the man in black. I hate the inclusion of the character in this series, but if you're gonna have a movie that tries to explain what he's doing, you might as well feature him a little more. Makes sense to me. The opening credits of both films feature a cast member telling us Michael's backstory, but in the theatrical cut, it's Paul Rudd.
For years, he was locked up in Smith's Grove Sanitarium, but he escaped.
while the producer's cut gives us a classic thespian delivery from Donald Pleasence.
For years he was locked up, locked away in Smith Grove Sanatorium. But he escaped.
The script for each narration is also a bit different, with Loomis's focusing more on the family element of Michael's murder sprees. Then we get a flashback to the end of part 5 with a crazy voice added into the mix.
Jamie, come to me.
We see Michael being taken away in a van, and it's pretty weird to watch the personification of evil getting kidnapped like he's Liam Neeson's daughter. Jamie is likewise abducted, and then we see the big explosion that led everyone to believe Michael and Jamie have both been dead these past however many years. Jamie's escape from the Candlely cult lair includes an extra shot that shows Michael beginning his chase. And also, like I mentioned in the intro, we get more of that classic theme we all know and love, as opposed to the theatrical cuts music, which is this. While Nurse Mary's death on the wall spike is the same, the next kill was reshot to be gorier for the theatrical cut, with an exposed spine and more blood. Again, original kill in producer's cut, simple neck snap. Reshot gorier kill in the theatrical cut, airing out the brainstem. Back in Haddonfield, Danny Strode is still seeing the man in black, but at least in the producer's cut, Kara has the decency to do a stay away monsters ritual to help put the little boy at ease.
Stay away, monsters. Stay away, ghouls. Stay away from Danny. You jerks know the rules.
Why cut her being a caring mother? I don't really know. All I know is that apparently the Weinsteins didn't like actress Marianne Hagan because they said she was too thin and that her chin was too pointy. So yeah, just goes to show that those dudes have always been garbage people. Meanwhile, over at Loomis's cozy little hideaway, there are more shots of Donald Pleasence and more dialogue between him and Wynn. Again, the theatrical cut, which the Weinsteins favored, has a lot less Loomis, while the producer's cut features a line from the little doctor saying he got plastic surgery to explain away the missing makeup effects from parts 4 and 5.
I had surgery, plastic surgery, skin grafts. It cost a fortune, but at least I don't frighten people anymore.
That's another thing you may notice overall. The producer's cut does a better job tying back to the rest of the series. Jamie Lloyd's escape through the night is mostly the same in both versions, from the bus depot where she calls into Barry's radio show to the truck chase where Michael runs her off the road. But we get a huge divergence in the barn. In the theatrical cut, she of course gets a super gnarly death on a hay baling machine that mulches her insides. But in this version, Jamie is just stabbed below screen by an unseen Michael Myers and collapses to the floor of the barn. She lies there, still breathing, as Michael goes to the truck to grab that roll of hotel towels he thinks is his grandnephew. Another extra portion of Loomis in this cut is during a scene at Smith's Grove, where Wynn and Loomis argue about the call from Jamie Lloyd they both heard during their shock jock radio doctor hangout time. Wynn is all like, come on man, Jamie died in that jail cell explosion thing, adding a sort of Sidious spice to this storyline that makes his Man in Black reveal slightly less absurd than it is in the theatrical cut, where Wynn is hardly on screen at all before that revelation. The producer's cut does a better job introducing the Strode family, since we get some real choice dialogue from Kara's brother Tim.
Yo, G, what's up? Barry's my homeboy from Chicago.
I don't know why they cut Tim explaining his connection to Barry Sims, or for that matter, why they cut the close-up on the money that Kara's mom Deborah passes to her. Without that shot, Kara's dad John seems super extra crazy with his reaction.
Oh yeah, that's it, Deborah. Just keep slipping her the cash. You know, while you're at it, I got a great idea. Here, why don't you give her all of our goddamn money?
I'm like, what? We can't even see what he's mad at there. There's another pretty sick diff after Papa Strode strikes Kara.
Stay out of it.
Kill for him.
The producer's cut has the Man in Black's voice encouraging Danny to be a violent little bastard, which gives more motivation as to why he pulls a blade out on his granddad. And after Kara leaves, there's one more extra scene between the Strodes where John says Kara is no longer his daughter. One final punctuation on how much of a dick this dude is. The scene with Loomis and Wynn at the barn is longer, since in this version they find out that Jamie isn't dead. Although, as an off-screen paramedic says,
Only God can help her now, sir.
I love that line delivery. We even briefly meet the newest Haddonfield sheriff, although he winds up being a nothing character, so no big deal on cutting that interaction. But now that Jamie is still alive, it actually makes sense that Loomis is in the hospital when Tommy goes there with that bathroom baby he found. Plus, there are more shots of Wynn, which again go to make the Man in Black reveal marginally better. There's an extra scene when Kara goes to college where she walks around campus and sees a couple making out on a picnic bench. Tongue and looks like she's getting spied upon by crazy-haired Michael Myers in a shot that, again, echoes the style of the original. After that, the next few differences are pretty minor for a while. There's an extra shot of the boarding house Tommy lives in, we see Jamie Lloyd in surgery, where a doctor takes the knife out of her that probably should have been taken care of a bit sooner. And then there are some extensions to a couple of scenes that are in the theatrical cut, but that I didn't mention in the kill count. First is one wherein Loomis talks to Deborah. In the producer's cut, he talks to her a little longer. And second is when Deborah calls her husband John at work to tell him she's leaving. Again, most of this scene is in the theatrical version, but only in the producer's cut does it end with John speaking to a picture of his daughter Kara.
Happy Halloween, little girl.
Yeah, that's pretty weird, dude. What are you doing with that picture? We get one final scene with Jamie Lloyd in the hospital as she has black and white flashbacks to a time she was rushed down the Smiths Grove hallways in a procession led by the man in black, sticking his hands out like he's driving down the highway with the windows down. It's a real weird sequence that explains where exactly her baby came from, all but spelling out that she was raped by her uncle Michael in a nasty Rosemary's Baby type situation.
Michael, please don't hurt me. Oh God, please forgive me.
When that flashback is over, this happens.
Your work is done now, Jamie.
Yeah, so originally, Jamie survived the barnyard attack, only to get shot in the head by the man in black. That didn't go over well with a lot of people, but then again, neither did the extraneously gory death by Hay Baylor. It's kinda like you can't win when you recast a central character, then kill them off. Remaster! Sorry, something in my throat. The scene is wrapped up with a shot of the MIB's alter ego standing behind Loomis when he learns about Jamie's death. The next big change is one I mentioned in the kill count, and that's the much less graphic death of John Strode. For the theatrical release, they reshot his death to be gorier, with that crazy head explosion. But in the original producer's cut, he goes out in a much less explosive way, although it is still pretty shocking. Michael once again grabs John by the throat and stabs him against the circuit breaker, which electrocutes him and causes the house's lights to flash. But the death itself is pretty PG, with no frothiness at the mouth or head explosion. Mustafa Akkad and his son Malik, who by this point was also producing, didn't think these movies needed the type of gore added at the Weinstein's insistence. One of the more minor changes involves the shortening of a shot that I just don't understand, especially since the longer one adds a scotch of clarity. It's when Barry Sims is looking for his radio station's van so he can head back to the Myers house. In the producer's cut, the shot goes on long enough to show that it's actually the Smiths Grove van he climbs into. Again, no idea why they cut that. I think it adds a simple explanation as to why Michael was waiting inside to kill this radio fuckhead. Similarly, the theatrical cut also removes a shot through the windshield of Barry's murder that pans across the parking lot to show that his radio station's van was nearby. Close but no cigar, Bear. There's a really weird difference between cuts when Tim finds Barry's body in a tree. In the theatrical cut, he finds Barry's body after hearing a little girl talking to her mom about the warm red rain.
Mommy, it's raining. It's raining red. Mommy, it's raining red. It's raining. It's warm.
But in the producer's cut, the little girl's actually singing a song about it.
Mommy, it's raining. It's raining red. Mommy, it's raining. It's raining red. Mommy, it's raining red. It's warm.
Why was that change made? What, little girls aren't allowed to sing when they're getting blood rained down on them? Just seems really weird. Later on, in the Myers House Massacre, Tim is killed the same, but Beth's death is a little more restrained. Gone are the repetitive slow motion shots of the theatrical cut, and instead, it's a quicker series of backstabs that puts her down. I'm guessing they just slowed down footage they had to be more extreme. After that, everything else plays out the same for a while. The Myers House sequence, the wind reveal, until after Kara jumps out of that window like a crazy lady. This time, after that shot fades to black, we come back to Kara tied up on a slab for a cult ceremony, dressed like she's ready to go burn down the Wicker Man. We still have that weird scene between Loomis and Tommy talking about drugs and shit, but there is an extra establishing shot of Smiths Grove looking like a castle before the dynamic duo gets inside. At that point, there's some extra dialogue between them about Michael and the cult's curse.
I think Michael is under the influence of an evil rune.
Thorn.
Well, there are runes of light, protection. If Thorn could somehow be trapped by these runes, the energies could cancel themselves out. The evil could be destroyed.
I guess they cut all that from the theatrical cut because, you know, it sounds real dumb. But again, if that's the whole basis of this movie, you've got to at least try to explain it. The theatrical cut does not. The scene between Loomis and Wynn in the latter's office is actually entirely different. Different office, different costumes. They straight up shot this shit twice. Or at least Wynn actor Mitchell Ryan did. Again, sadly, Donald Pleasance had passed before the reshoots, so the theatrical cut actually features his original original shots intercut with the reshot segments of Wynn. For what it's worth, I think Wynn is much more menacing in the producer's cut, in spite of the giant stupid vampire collar he's wearing. He says he's Michael's guardian, always watching over him, and that's when Loomis gets knocked out, same as before, only I guess with a stunt double in the reshoot. But that's it for the similarities. Pretty much everything from here on out is totally different. That means that the producer's cut has no random crazy lady dying from a stomach wound, no strobe light Dr. Massacre, no underground tunnel chase scene, and no Paul Rudd beating Michael Myers until he's bleeding green goop. All of that came from reshoots, wherein director Joe Chappelle recast Michael Myers so he could get a thinner performer, namely Michael Lerner, although at least they included original performer George P. Wilbur, who also played Mike in Part 4, as that featured doctor victim who gets crushed against the gate. Instead of all that though, the final sequence of the producer's cut kicks off with Tommy Doyle sneakily coming across the Thorn Cult ceremony that Kara is getting put through. Oh, and look, there's Mrs. Blankenship, as well as Wynn's secretary who we saw once before. Fun. But man, this whole thing looks ridiculous, with Michael Myers standing off to the side like an altar boy, and Danny Strode still wearing that fucking Barry Kicks Ass shirt. Trust me, the shirt's not that cool. Tommy sees a spare Dracula robe and goes to suit up in it, while Wynn tells Danny that he's the next one who will be killing in the name of! The name of evil, that is, because I guess the curse of the thorn is gonna be transferred to him after Michael's final sacrifice. When Michael goes to fulfill that sacrifice with Jamie's baby, Kara stops him by telling him the awful truth, that the baby is his. Then Tommy shows up with a dagger to Wynn's neck to stop this whole baby killing affair, cause we don't need to see this shit. Tommy directs a cult member to untie Kara so she's able to grab that baby and make a super getaway with Tommy and her son. There's a different Smith's Grove chase sequence in the producer's cut, and this one doesn't end up in Zordon's command center. There are also no test tube babies around like in the theatrical version, which I believe were added to offer an alternate explanation to the creation of Jamie's baby, rather than, you know, raped by her evil uncle. The best part of the producer's cut chase sequence though is definitely that Tommy's wearing that Manos Hands of Fate getup the whole time. Turns out to be useful though, because he finds a bunch of stupid runes inside. So the finale of this cut features him setting them out on the ground as Michael continues walking down the hallway, then cutting open his hand to smear blood on the floor. Michael reaches him and grabs him by the throat, but after Tommy croaks out Sam Hain like a Philistine, Michael lets him go so Paul Rudd can do some of that head-twitching acting that we saw more of in the theatrical cut. Tommy then runs outside so he can explain to Loomis and the audience what the fuck just happened.
Power of the runes stopped him.
Sounds stupid, but the story checks out, because back in the hallway, Michael's still standing there like an idiot in the middle of all those rocks. Wynn comes up and is very disappointed in Michael's impotence, and he doesn't notice when the killer does an Arthurian fist clench at his side. A few extra lines of dialogue between Loomis and the kids makes that come with us scene a little less abrupt, and in this cut, we actually follow Loomis as he heads back inside to take care of his unattended to business. There he finds Michael lying on the floor in the middle of all those rocks, except when he goes to remove the William Shatner mask, he finds Dr. Wynn instead. Wynn is just as shocked as Loomy, but he tells the old doctor that it's his game now, and Loomis watches in horror as the Curse of Thorn tattoo appears on his wrist? I'm sorry, what the fuck? The movie ends with Michael Myers in the Man in Black costume walking down a hospital hallway, escaping out into the night to presumably kill some more. So overall, how do these two cuts stack up? Well, let's compare them. As far as runtime goes, the producer's cut is 8 minutes longer, since it tends to let things breathe a little more. Meanwhile, despite the shorter runtime, the theatrical cut has more than twice the kills, since it added in that Strobe Hospital massacre. The theatrical version is also much gorier, with at least 3 deaths, Jamie Lloyd's, the truck drivers, and John Strode's, a lot more graphic. But the producer's cut makes a lot more sense story-wise, featuring a better exploration of the Thorn cult and not jumping around between scenes as much. Since I hate the Dr. Massacre scene, I think the producer's cut has the better ending for the most part, except in one crucial way. I think it's better to end with the implication that Loomis dies, like the theatrical cut does, since it puts a closure on the role after Donald Pleasence passed away in real life. My final verdict is that both cuts are pretty bad movies, but the producer's cut is slightly less bad. If you want to see more kills and graphic deaths, go ahead and watch the theatrical version, but if you want a version that makes a tad more sense, go with the producer's cut. Hope you enjoyed this new series. If it's received well, I'll try to do it for other movies I cover that have starkly different cuts in existence. But until next time, I'm James A. Janice, and you can consider these cuts compared. Hey everyone, thanks a lot for watching my first cut comparison video. I want to thank a couple of patrons like Jeremy Eiler, Andrea Saldana, Jason Owens, and Larnie Bruce. Other movies I have in mind for this series are the entire Alien quadrilogy and Rob Zombie's Halloweens. I might not be able to do the Rob Zombie ones right away, because this was a lot more work than I expected, but I promise I will in the future. Alright everybody, thanks a lot, be good people.